Canada is once again dominating conversations today, not only across social media platforms, but also in everyday discussions among families, co-workers, and communities nationwide. From early morning phone checks to late-night debates, people are actively trying to understand what is changing and why it matters. Whenever a country like Canada announces new rules or policy adjustments, reactions are inevitable. Curiosity, concern, and uncertainty rise simultaneously, especially when people feel their future plans could be affected. That is exactly why today's update has captured so much attention and why it deserves to be discussed responsibly. Canada has long been recognized for its structured governance and gradual approach to policy changes. Decisions are typically based on research, data, and long-term projections rather than impulsive reactions. However, even the most carefully planned updates can feel sudden when they touch real lives. Whether someone is working, studying, immigrating, raising a family, or planning long-term settlement, any mention of new rules naturally triggers questions. People want clarity, reassurance, and most importantly, accuracy. What amplifies today's reaction is the broader context in which this update arrives. Many individuals are already dealing with economic pressure, rising costs, housing challenges, and global uncertainty. When people are already stretched, even small adjustments can feel overwhelming. That emotional weight does not necessarily reflect the severity of the update itself, but rather the environment in which it is being introduced. Understanding this distinction is crucial. One of the most important realities to recognize right now is that not every update applies to everyone. Canada is a vast and diverse country with different provinces, territories, and population groups. Policies often target specific areas or categories of people rather than the entire population. Unfortunately, online discussions frequently blur these distinctions, creating confusion and unnecessary fear. Many people assume that a rule announced today will immediately change their personal situation, which is rarely accurate. Another factor that often gets overlooked is timing. In Canada, announcements and enforcement are usually separate phases. An update may signal a future direction rather than an immediate action. Implementation often comes with timelines, transitional provisions, and clear guidelines. This phased approach exists to allow individuals, businesses, and institutions time to adapt. Ignoring this structure leads to panic-driven interpretations that do not reflect reality. Canada's federal and provincial systems also operate independently in many areas. A federal announcement does not automatically translate into identical provincial rules. Provinces have authority over many policies, and their responses may vary. This layered system can appear complex, but it is designed to address regional differences. Understanding this separation helps people interpret updates more accurately instead of assuming uniform nationwide impact. A major theme behind today's update is sustainability. Canada continues to balance population growth, economic development, public services, and infrastructure capacity. When growth outpaces systems like housing, healthcare, or transportation, adjustments become necessary. These adjustments are not meant to create barriers, but to protect long-term stability. Ignoring pressure points would only lead to more serious challenges later. For workers, today's discussion reinforces the importance of compliance and awareness. Canada's workforce includes citizens, permanent residents, and temporary workers, all operating under defined rules. Policy updates often focus on fairness, transparency, and accountability. They aim to ensure that workers are protected while employers meet their responsibilities. When systems function properly, exploitation decreases and trust increases. For students, especially international students, policy discussions often feel personal. Education is a key part of Canada's global reputation and economic framework. However, educational programs must align with capacity, quality standards, and realistic outcomes. Updates in this area are typically about maintaining balance rather than discouraging participation. Understanding intent helps reduce unnecessary anxiety. Families and long-term residents often view updates through the lens of stability. Social systems such as healthcare, housing, and public benefits rely on careful planning. Policy changes are often introduced to preserve these systems rather than dismantle them. While change can feel unsettling, it is frequently aimed at protecting what already exists. One reason today's update feels especially intense is the speed at which information now travels. In the digital age, news does not wait for full explanations before spreading. Short clips, partial screenshots, and emotionally charged headlines move across platforms within minutes, often reaching millions of people before official details are fully released. This creates a situation where perception forms faster than understanding. A single sentence, when removed from its original context, can completely alter how an update is interpreted. Without full background, people naturally fill in missing details with assumptions, personal fears, or online speculation, which unintentionally fuels misinformation even when there is no malicious intent behind it. Social media algorithms amplify emotional content more than factual explanations. This means that dramatic interpretations often gain more visibility than calm, accurate summaries. As a result, many people encounter reactions before they encounter facts. This sequence matters because first impressions are powerful. When fear or shock is introduced early, it becomes difficult to reverse even after clarifications are released. This is why responsible interpretation requires patience and restraint, especially during the first hours of any announcement. Canada's policymaking process, however, is designed to counter exactly this type of confusion through transparency and structure. Official announcements are rarely the final word. They are usually followed by detailed explanations, background documents, and formal guidance intended to clarify intent, scope, and implementation. These materials provide the context that short headlines cannot capture. They explain who is affected, when changes take effect, and how transitions are handled. Ignoring these follow-ups and reacting only to initial headlines often leads to unnecessary stress, confusion, and decisions based on incomplete information. Another important reality is that early reactions often overestimate both the speed and the scale of change. Many policies are introduced gradually, with clear timelines and built-in transition periods. This phased approach exists to prevent disruption and allow individuals and institutions time to adjust. When people assume that everything changes immediately, they place themselves under pressure that may not actually exist. Understanding timelines is just as important as understanding the rules themselves. It is also essential to recognize that policy announcements are rarely final in their earliest form. Canada's governance system actively incorporates consultation and feedback. Provinces, industries, community organizations, and other stakeholders often respond to initial proposals. This feedback can influence how rules are refined, clarified, or adjusted before full implementation. This process does not signal weakness or uncertainty. It reflects a system that values input and real-world impact. Assuming that an early announcement represents an unchangeable final outcome is often inaccurate and unnecessarily alarming. Canada's decision-making does not happen in isolation. Domestic policies are influenced by global economic trends, international mobility patterns, labor market shifts, and geopolitical developments. Changes in one part of the world often create ripple effects elsewhere. For example, global economic slowdowns, international conflicts, or shifts in migration patterns can place pressure on domestic systems. Updates introduced today are often responses to these broader realities, even if those connections are not immediately visible in headlines. Understanding this global context helps explain why adjustments may feel sudden even though they are part of long-term planning. For individuals who may be directly affected by updates, preparation is far more valuable than panic. Preparation means taking time to understand personal circumstances, current status, eligibility requirements, and official timelines. It involves identifying which parts of an update are relevant and which are not. Panic, on the other hand, leads to rushed decisions, financial loss, and emotional stress. It also increases vulnerability to misinformation and exploitation. Calm awareness allows people to respond strategically rather than emotionally. Periods of policy change often attract individuals or sources claiming guaranteed solutions. These claims can be tempting, especially when uncertainty is high. However, Canada's systems operate on documented rules and verifiable processes. There are no shortcuts that bypass official requirements. Legitimate outcomes come through compliance, accuracy, and patience. Anyone promising guaranteed results without proper assessment or documentation should be approached with extreme caution. Language also plays a powerful role in shaping public reaction. Words like breaking, shocking, or major are designed to capture attention quickly. They reflect public emotion and urgency rather than the actual severity or scope of an update. While such language is effective for visibility, it often oversimplifies complex policy discussions. Once details are examined, many updates turn out to be refinements, clarifications, or recalibrations rather than radical shifts. Distinguishing between emotional language and factual impact is essential for informed understanding. Canada's history demonstrates a consistent pattern of adaptation. The country regularly reviews and updates policies to reflect changing economic conditions, demographic shifts, and social needs. This adaptability has played a significant role in maintaining long-term stability. Systems that refuse to adjust eventually become overwhelmed or ineffective. Change, when managed responsibly, is often a sign of resilience rather than instability. At the individual level, informed awareness makes a meaningful difference. Knowing where to find reliable information, understanding how to interpret official language, and recognizing whether an update applies personally allows people to plan with confidence. Fear thrives in uncertainty, but clarity reduces anxiety. When individuals replace assumptions with verified information, their ability to make sound decisions improves significantly. Another important aspect is emotional management. Policy updates can feel personal, especially when they intersect with life plans, family decisions, or financial commitments. Acknowledging emotional reactions without allowing them to drive decisions is critical. Taking time to process information, seek clarification, and evaluate options leads to better outcomes than reacting impulsively. As more clarifications emerge, understanding naturally improves. This is why patience is not passive, it is strategic. Allowing time for official explanations, expert analysis, and real-world examples helps separate perception from reality. Reacting too early often means reacting to noise rather than substance. Canada remains a country grounded in structure, rule of law, and long-term planning. Updates like these are part of maintaining balance in a complex and changing world. While no policy is perfect, the intention behind adjustments is typically to improve sustainability, fairness, and functionality over time. Ultimately, the way information is consumed and shared shapes public response as much as the policy itself. Choosing facts over fear, context over clips, and verification over virality creates a healthier information environment. Today's update may feel intense, but informed understanding consistently proves more powerful than speculation. This moment calls for awareness rather than alarm. Staying informed is essential, but panic is unnecessary. Canada continues to evolve, and those who approach change with clarity and patience are best positioned to navigate it confidently.